Hello, Legion, and welcome once again to the Paranormal NightStalker. I am Joel Walling. With me, as always, is my co-defendant, guess you could call it, Michael Smith. And we're going to do another quick intro, just because we did a pre-recording with this. This week we have author Jazz Flamand, and this is she's talking about her new book. She has some other books out. She's actually venturing into the world of the paranormal nonfiction. And also promoting that starting Monday, January 21st, she will be having her own podcast right here on the NightStalker Podcast Network. I always want to throw paranormal in there. That P gets into my head and then is like, yep, that's it. But it is just the NightStalker Network. She's going to be doing a podcast called Giving Up the Ghost. If you want to go to Spreaker.com, search it. You can already go on there, give it a like and a follow it, and that way you'll know exactly when it comes out. Of course, by the end of the week, next week, that is, after the Monday, so by Friday, it should be available on all major podcasting platforms, including Spreaker, of course, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, iTunes, Google, all of the normal Stitcher and all of the stuff that you normally would find, whatever podcast you listen to, including this one and all the other ones available on the NightStalker Network. We also want to take a quick second to welcome Dr. John and the Scary Cast, as well as Bigfoot and Company, to the NightStalker Podcast Network. They have just started up with us. Their first episode actually came out last night, and I'm looking at big things with this. They've got some great guests coming up. They're doing stuff with the Hollow Earth and Planet X coming in. It's just, there's a lot of neat stuff coming from them. Of course, that's also not even just dealing with paranormal. There's also a person that works with there called Papa Stroh. He was known as the Maestro, or Robbie Eagle, I believe was his name, in Smoky Mountain Wrestling. For anyone who has listened to the show, you've heard me use quite often professional wrestling quotes, because I am a pro wrestling fan. Not of the new stuff really, but of the old stuff. I love the old stuff, the NWA, kind of the southern old WCW, that kind of stuff, the southern style wrestling. And he's been right in the middle of it. Smoky Mountain Wrestling was actually one of my favorites. I actually found it more recently. I didn't see it when it was happening then, but it's good, the good old stuff we remember. And like I said, that's always my kind of, I call it my guilty pleasure, because it's something that you can just turn on and just sit back and then watch it. You get into it. It doesn't take a lot of thought. It doesn't take any processing. You could just sit back and enjoy it. So we're looking at bringing a wrestling podcast to the network as well. And as a fan, I'm super excited about that. And just wanted, again, to take a couple of seconds to welcome Scary Cast, Bigfoot and Company, both available on iTunes Podcast Addict, Stitcher Podcast, Google Play, Spotify, everywhere that you can possibly think of to look, except for iHeartRadio. iHeartRadio is coming soon for them, I'm sure. Other than that, you can find it anywhere else you want to look, literally anywhere. So wanted just to take a quick second and welcome them. Now, this is going to be saying, we are recording this actually, the 18th. The day this comes out, we're recording this. And I'm going to throw it over to Michael just to see if he's got anything and he has anything he wants to talk about. But I did just read something online that I want to kind of talk about and go a little bit off on a rant. And, anyone who listens.
Yeah. I was going to react to you did. So go ahead and start and I'll jump in later.
Okay, so we're both on the same page with that, and that's really about all we wanted to throw in. Like I said, this is just a quick little update. Well, not update, it's just a quick little intro to the show before we get to the interview, which I gotta say was an absolutely great interview. And listening to their first episode with post-production, I can't wait for that one to come out. It's absolutely amazing because it sounds like they are partaking in some, how should I word this? Adult refreshments, and they get a little salty in places, kind of toward the end, and it actually makes the podcast awesome. Honestly, to me, listening to it, and it picked up a whole other personality and everything, and I was just like, oh, this is gonna be great. So,
yeah. I would never be one to suggest anyone partake of any alcohol and do any dangerous thing like driving or anything like that. I partake of my adult beverages at home whenever I have one, which I don't have one very often, but I have been known to have a Jameson and Coke during a podcast. So yes, I understand the concept.
Yeah, actually, that actually threw a whole. I think it was actually Dr. John I was talking to about that. Actually, it was you. I can't remember if it was when me and Dr. John were talking or what, but I think it was him. Somehow he got it worked out. I was like, we should all sit down and just, they have that show on, up here it's on Much or something like that, but it's called Drunk History. It's where comedians literally get drunk and try to explain a event in history. And I said we should do the same thing with podcasts. We should have a drunk podcasting night one night. It will either be the greatest podcast in the history of podcasting, or it will get us kicked off of every platform we are available on. It would be one of the two. I don't think there is an in-between. But like I said, I think it would be a blast. I get Papa Stroke and Dr. John, I'll talk to Aaron. It was Aaron. It was you, me, and Aaron a couple of weeks ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But we'll get everybody on it. Everybody just you buy whatever you like to drink. Everybody just sit around, get a couple of drinks in before we get on, start recording. God knows what we would end up recording. It may be one of those things where we listen back to it. I listen back to it the next day editing and be like, this can never see the light of day. Well, that's the other thing. We probably have to do it live, because probably if I listen back the next day, I would be like, oh my God, we have single-handedly ruined all of our careers.
Oh my God, we can't put that out.
Yeah, this has single-handedly ruined all of our careers. So yeah, we can't put that out. So we'd have to do it live, but who knows? Maybe that'll be if we ever start a Patreon or something like that, maybe that'll be a Patreon bonus. 1 week or 1 month we'll do a drunk podcast and just really get the filters off. Like I said, get a few drinks in. If you get a few drinks in me, God knows what'll come out. But back to, well, wait a minute. I don't. That's actually not a valid point, because I'm like, if you get a few drinks in me, God knows what'll come out. God knows what I'm going to say any damn way.
Yeah, the drinks aren't really necessary as far as that goes.
No, I'm just more mouthy. But back to what we wanted to, like I said, basically this is going to be a rant. It's may not be for the faint of heart, but I was just reading something here, and I'm going to, and it was one of those things that absolutely made me look at it and go, are you fucking kidding me? I was reading, see this ad. As I've talked about before, I'm part of, a lot of groups on Facebook. I mean, we have like, Paranormal Hauntings, Spirit Paranormal, Team Spirit. I think it's Team Spirit Paranormal, actually, out of the UK, Haunted Happenings, things like that. And a lot of these groups, some of it's very interesting. And I follow a lot of them because, like I said, some of it's very interesting. I like interacting with people. I like talking to people about it. I like to do all of that. So yeah, I'm part of a lot of paranormal groups on Facebook, just because it's what I'm interested in. So that's what I do. That's what I talk about. Well, I found a ad, and it's, like I said, it was one of those things that just made me go, what the fuck? Because on January 25th, and I believe it's in New Hampshire, I'm actually looking for the ad as we speak on Facebook, and I can't seem to find it. That's a bad habit of mine. Well, actually, it's not a bad habit of mine. I had it on my laptop, and now that I'm recording on my laptop, so if anyone messages me or we get an announcement or I get a notification or something, I don't have bing, 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 bing all through the recording. But basically what it is for the low price of $125 freaking dollars, you can take place with A Night with Annabelle. The real Annabelle. This is not, it actually says on there, this is not a movie prop. For $125, you can sit and listen to stories from, I can't even remember the guy's name. That's how,
Tony Sparrow.
Who is the son-in-law of Ed and Lorraine Warren. You can get your picture taken with him and Annabelle. Hear stories from their case file, including The Conjuring, which, if you happen to listen to Psychic Medium Sherry, she's had Andrea Perron, the oldest daughter of the Perron family, on. She will be having her on again in the near future. You realize that the actual Conjuring movie, and I would actually love to hear this, because this is honest to God. I'd love to hear this, because I'd love to know if this guy really is a ambulance chaser equivalent of a paranormal guy, and see if he sticks with the story that was told in the movie, or if he actually goes with what really happened. Because if you've listened to that show, and any of the times that Andrea has talked, you know clearly there are two very different stories there. One is very much Hollywood, and the one actually happened. And it's like I've said 1,000 times. If you don't hear it from the horse's mouth, don't believe it from the horse's ass. And that's exactly what you're running into here. You know, if he's going to get up there and he's going to talk about, you know, Ed Warren performing an exorcism and all of this shit, none of that happened. None of it. And just to give you even a better idea of how much Hollywood is influencing these movies, let's take The Conjuring 2, the Enfield Poltergeist. The Warrens offered to come and help with that. They were told, don't bother. The Warrens never stepped foot in England to have anything to do with the Enfield Poltergeist. So right up front, that movie, complete fiction. Complete fiction. Nothing even about their files. Because their files would have made a very quick movie. Hi, we're Ed and Lorraine Warren. Would you like us to help with the Enfield Poltergeist? No thanks, we're good. Okay, have a nice day. End of the movie. No one's going to buy that. So they literally created a fake story and just used real people involved in it. So none of The Conjuring 2 actually happened. You know, and and like I said, a lot of The Conjuring 1, while the Perron family was real, or is real, excuse me, you know, there's still Perrons out there. Ed and Lorraine Warren did investigate them. They were not there for, 3 months or 4 months or however long the movie portrayed it. They did not simply show up and Ed, wave his magic wand and Lorraine go ooga booga booga and everything's all better. This was actually a 10-year ordeal with this family. We have laws in place now over disclosure of haunted houses and things like that, and paranormal reports of paranormal activity in houses because of them. So, the movie is a drastic difference, and I'd love to know which side this guy's going to go on. I would love to be there to look at him and go, bullshit! But then again, I'm not going to pay $125 for this. I'm not going to buy the freaking plane ticket and go through all the hassle it would take for me to get to, I believe it was in New Hampshire. I mean, that's like, 4,000 some miles from me. Not going to happen.
It ain't that far from me, but I'm not going to go there still and pay $125 to see it, because I'd be the same as you. Although I'm in a wheelchair and can't stand up, I'd be yelling bullshit very loud.
Yeah, yelling bullshit very loudly. Shenanigans, shaking brooms and throwing stuff at people. I mean, that kind of thing.
Because here's the question that I have. Okay, this doll is supposedly cursed, demonically infested, whatever you want to call it. there is a story from way back. Now, I don't know if this is true or not, but it was told on air by someone that worked at the museum. I don't remember if it was Lorraine Warren or if it was John Zaffis, but I think it was Mrs. Warren. And I can't say anything bad about Mrs. Warren because I don't know the lady. I know that she was tested at the Rhine for her cognitive ability, and she was tested quite high, from what I understand. So I'm not disparaging that lady at all. This is all I'm going to say on it. If that doll is as demonically infested as has always been claimed, that it caused accidents and various other things to happen to people, and that a priest had to be brought in every so often to re-bless it to calm it down, and it would move on its own inside the case. If any of that stuff is true, and I do not know if it's true or not, I'm just saying if it's true, like it's been claimed to be true, then why would anyone put that out in contact with the public? That's irresponsible. So therefore, either it's not cursed, it's all bullshit, and they made a ton of money off of it, or it is cursed. It's all the negative things they say about it are true, and they're irresponsible with it. If it's that dangerous, it should not be the object of a $125 photo with you and the son-in-law and the doll. That's all I want to say on that.
Well, now see, now the asshole comes on. Because I will say more. First off, I've got to wonder. Okay, back a few years ago, when I really started into this and I started getting connections in the paranormal and started talking to people who knew people and even talking to the people that those people knew, it was always explained that the reason John Zaffis, the nephew of Ed and Lorraine Warren, took over everything after Ed died was, one, Lorraine's age. And like you said, there's a lot of things, documentation backing up her abilities and backing up what she was capable of. And we do know for a fact that Ed Warren was, at the time, if not still to date, the only non-Catholic Vatican-sanctioned exorcist in the world.
It wasn't a priest.
Yeah, he was not a priest. He was not part of the Catholic Church in that sense. And the Vatican actually gave him their seal of approval. I don't have a lot of respect for the Catholic Church. I really don't. The Catholic Church to me is kind of scraping at the bottom of the barrel. But the simple fact of it is the Vatican, as far as exorcisms and those kind of things go, they're about as good as it comes. They are hardcore. They make sure these people know what the hell they're doing. They make sure that if a priest or someone goes out to actually work and do something with this, that the people they are dealing with are actually not mentally ill, not having some other disease. They have been through doctor's appointments. They've been through psychiatric appointments. They've been investigated by paranormal researchers. Everyone has this image from movies and for television that you can walk in and you do an exorcism in a matter of minutes. No, it takes months and years to get an exorcism done. So I got to say, so there are documentation stating that the Warrens were as legit as it comes in this field. And so I won't completely discredit them as far as that goes. But now, like I said, it was originally told that they only had the one child. They had a daughter, or have a daughter. Sorry. She's still alive. And she wanted nothing to do with this stuff. They didn't really want her to have anything to do with this stuff. So John, being their nephew, ended up working with them and actually spending a lot of time with them. I think partially raised by them. And he kind of took over for Ed. I actually know people that have worked with him. We've talked to him on the NightStalker. I've got respect for John, what he does. I'm just wondering, how am I going to put this without sounding like a complete asshole? Because we all know I'm missing parts.
Well, you are a complete asshole. We still love you. Go ahead and just say it.
What the fuck kind of person did the daughter marry that, or did he even look at her and go, wait a minute, I know how to make a fucking fortune off of her? Because basically this is what's happened. This guy came out of nowhere. No one had ever heard of this guy until 2 years ago? 3 years ago maybe? Then he started all of a sudden parading around Annabelle like a fucking show dog.
He was the one that took her to
Zach Bagans. Which, speaking of another show dog, we can get on that topic at another time. So this guy shows up and he starts bringing out what has been reported to be the single most haunted possession in the world ever. And parading it around and charging people money to do it. And this is the thing. He knows, okay, we held a presentation here in Terrace. We were able to fit 40, 50 people in that room. If we were charging $125 a head, we'd be walking out of there with $5,000. $5,000 for one night work? Oh yeah, I'll take that any day of the damn week.
Hell, me too. I want my cut.
So yeah, this guy is going to get up there and he's going to parade this doll around that I have actually questioned the validity of the doll to begin with, because I did actually watch the Ghost Adventures thing where Zach tried to get a private room so he could fuck Annabelle the doll. And I've actually put side-by-side comparison pictures. Either A, this is not the Annabelle doll, and he is completely full of bullshit, or B, they changed her clothes because she's not wearing the same dress she is in the pictures with Lorraine Warren, or the ones of her in the case. So, now my question is he a complete con? Is he actually a total con where he has actually gotten another Raggedy Ann doll that roughly looks like Annabelle? Close enough for, as Star used to say, close enough for government work.
Yep.
And is parading it around going, look, have your picture taken with Annabelle. $125. Or is he actually brought out what again has been reported to be the most haunted, horrible, destructive, demonic thing ever on the face of the planet, to whore it out for $125 a photo op? If that is the case, if that's truly the case, if this is the real Annabelle doll, then I don't think we're looking at him being the greatest con man. I think Ed and Lorraine Warren were. Because while they may have had gifts, they may have been good at what they did, you can exercise a whole lot of people when those people aren't really possessed. Andrea would not talk bad about Lorraine. She said she's a great, wonderful person. They're friends today. She actually went to the premiere of The Conjuring with Lorraine Warren. They watched it together. And Lorraine was upset by the movie. She said that movie was complete and utter crap. That it was not what she wanted. She was actually crying on the scene where Ed did the exorcism in The Conjuring, because she said he would never do that. That is disrespectful to the church. It's disrespectful to the priests that do it. He would never have done that. So, you see that there was at least some integrity in them. That's where I'm wondering on this. And I've got to go, and I'm not going to go over the entire history of the Warrens. That could be an episode all in itself, and God knows we may end up doing that one day. I'm going strictly on Annabelle. And let's look at Annabelle through the eyes of investigators. Not Warren fans, not paranormal fans, but actual investigators. You report to me this doll is haunted. Okay. Where's your proof? Well, we were called in by 2 nursing students. Okay, what are their names? We don't give you those. Okay, well, then what happened? Well, they said this happened, this happened, this happened, and this happened. Well, where did the doll come from? It came from a thrift store. Where was the thrift store? We won't tell you that. Honest to God, if you're looking at it as strictly the sense of a investigator, you're looking at a very good story, but not much else. Because let's face it, if you come to me like I've been to some haunted locations. If you came to me and said, "Oh, you said you got slapped on the back of the head." Yes, I did. Where did that happen? It happened in an apartment complex in Wilmington, North Carolina. I wouldn't say it online, but live or, over the airwaves, but I can give you the address. Okay. Who lived in the apartment at the time? Again, I can't say it right now, but I'll give it to you private. I can tell you the names of the people. I can tell you who was in the building. I can tell you where the building was. I can tell you what room of the building I was in. I can tell you every small detail, even as insignificant as possible about that event, because that event happened. They can't tell where the doll came from. They can't tell you who the doll belonged to. They can't tell you who gave them the doll. They can't tell you who called them. They say, oh, it was 2 nursing students. There is no verifiable history to the doll.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, as far as that goes, that's like me doing an investigation and giving out the results and not telling you how I collected the data so that nobody else could replicate it to see if I was right. I never assume that I'm right about anything. We don't. I mean, we'll do investigations and we'll collect our data. Or I'll work on something and I'll get data. But then I have to analyze the data and see if my conclusions are right. Then I've got to have somebody else analyze the data to see if my conclusions are right. But if I don't tell you how I collected the data so you can replicate the test, you can't do that. And that goes for paranormal and Bigfoot stuff and UFO stuff and all the things that we can't prove that we're trying to legitimize. If you do not disclose how you collect your data is useless.
Yeah. And that's what makes me really think, and I'm being honest here. I'm not, like I said, I'm not trying to discredit the Warrens or anything like that, because God knows if you look online, like I said before, I am part of a lot of groups on Facebook. There is a good chance if you're part of any of those groups, you have at one time or another talked to me. Even if you haven't realized it, you've talked to me. There's been some kind of comment or something back and forth. I've answered a question. I've asked a question. That's just the way it works. I do that all the time because that's my interest. This is what I do. You can give details, verifiable details, without disclosing personal information. They were nursing students. Okay. What school did they go to? A local university. Well, no shit, Sherlock. Name the school. I've always heard that the best way to tell a lie is to put in as much of the truth as possible. So Do I think that they just went out to a thrift store, saw this doll, and said, hey, I got a hell of an idea? No. Do I think somebody maybe had something going on in their house and called and said, hey, maybe it was when I got this weird-ass doll? Yes. Because let's face it. The Conjuring, the movie, complete and utter bullshit. Didn't actually happen the way it said. Nothing in the movie except for the names were real. The other famous case they had, the Amityville Horror, that has been argued for years because the people that actually supposedly had it happen to them have come out and said none of it actually happened.
Yeah, they made the whole thing up over 2 bottles of wine one night.
So there is a huge debate on the legitimacy of the Warrens to begin with, because frankly, they have had their stuff over and over again come out as false. So that's what I'm saying. So I'm looking at this and I'm honest to God thinking that Annabelle was a great story, and we all know they have the Haunted Museum and I have all of this stuff. So they've been charging for tickets to this for a while. And God knows how many books have had stuff about Annabelle in it. How many books have they written? How many TV appearances? And let's face it, folks, they got paid for all of it. They got paid for all of this. And now you got Slick Johnson, the son-in-law, that has decided we need more money. Well, how are we going to get more money? Well, the paranormal thing, God, if you're in the paranormal field to make money, I've got a better idea. You need to go and be a demolition expert and use only your forehead, because you're better luck at tearing down a building using only your forehead than you are at making money in the paranormal, unless you're a con. Unless you're a con, you're not going to make money in the paranormal. Yes, we advertise and everything on this show. That is a completely different thing. If you listen, you listen. If you don't, you don't. I'm not out on TV with my haunted tennis shoe trying to sell you tickets to take a picture with the shoe for $125. I mean, anyone can make up a story. God knows, people do it all the time. And that's what I think this guy's done. I honest to God think there is nothing to Annabelle. I think it's the biggest, greatest story in paranormal fiction ever. And I think by them doing this, by him coming out and parading this around, if there was any legitimacy with the Warrens at all, if the Warrens had any real integrity, he's got a bent over the rails, cornholing the hell out of it.
Well, I think, I know that cases are private. There are cases that are, we do residential cases that involve people that have real jobs, real lives, real neighbors. That if something come out, there was something in their house going on, even if it was something that ended up being not paranormal, they could have their jobs affected if they were professional people, and they could have social repercussions, or their neighbors would they'd be ridiculed, all kind of stuff would happen. Especially if they had kids, So, anything that happens on a residential case, some of the stuff is so strict that there are some team members that don't even go on some of the cases because they don't need to know.
Yeah. Well, it is very real. Like I've said, you have to protect the privacy of your client. You have to do that. And that is very true. But there are ways of giving verifiable, because for one thing, if they were truly protecting the privacy of their client,
it wouldn't be a movie.
Exactly. That doll would have never been seen.
Well, I don't know if it's still on there or not, but when I went to the website for John Zavis's investigation team, and I've never met Mr. Zavis. I've never talked to him. I take that back. I did call him once to check on him. I was going to ask him something, and he was actually shoveling snow. It had snowed up there, and I left him a name and a number. He never got back to me. But still, I have nothing against the man. I can't speak to anything about his methods because I've never worked with the man, so I don't know. But on the website, I don't know if it's still there or not. But when you agree to have an investigation done, even though the investigation is free, you have to sign a waiver allowing them to use your story in all or in part for television.
Yeah.
In case some producer comes along and says, this looks like a fucking good movie.
Well, John Zaffis is involved with the Conjuring series.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, I mean, how many paranormal teams do you know have a waiver that has to be signed? So
only
we can
only
use
ones,
your case.
Yeah, only ones headed by someone arrogant enough to call himself the Godfather of the Paranormal.
Unless they've taken that down, it did say that.
Again, I talked to him a little bit because when he was on the NightStalker, Star knew him. Star had worked with him before. I know other people that have worked with him before, and I have a respect for what he does. He is good at this.
I'm not going to say the man don't know his shit.
And he does, but like I said, the only ones that would have that kind of waiver are the ones headed by a guy arrogant enough to call himself the Godfather of the Paranormal. And he does. And that's pretty damn arrogant. But then again, you look at again, this will be something, actually I think, because we do have stuff coming up, and I realize our, one interview was an hour anyway, so we're going to be running really long on this one. But, egos get in the way of a lot of things here. And that's just a lot of what happens in the paranormal. You get this kind of, it's really cliquey. And these egos of these people, they get above them. And this is kind of going away from the Annabelle thing, although at the same time not. I mean, I'm sure this guy, because again, I've looked this guy up. He has nothing. He's never done investigations. He doesn't work with a team. He doesn't do anything but parade around this damn doll. This is what he does. That's how he makes a living. Because, let's face it, it's a hell of a lot easier to make $5,000 a night parading around a fucking doll than it is to actually have a day job. I mean, and it pays a hell of a lot better. Like I said, I made the joke about the haunted shoe. I could see the shoe right now. I'm considering making this story up. I mean, because like I said, I could use $5,000, and I'll be glad to have people taking pictures with it. And so it's I get it. I get the draw. I get that, because who doesn't want to be freaking rich? It's not a matter of fame. It's a matter of fortune. My only thing that I still wonder this is because of the fact, like I said, and we came out, if you want to try to find our episode, I think it's on iTunes and Google Play. I'm not positive. Look for our old logo, because we lost a bunch of episodes when we switched over to Spreaker from Blog Talk Radio. We lost a bunch of episodes, but as far as I know, they're still on iTunes. I'm just not going to incorporate the iTunes. I'm just not going to incorporate them. I just let them go. Fine. They're gone. But there was a 2-part special we did for the Ghost Hunters, or Ghost Adventures rather, Halloween special from 2 or 3 years ago, where they had the witch and the warlock and the vampire and all of that crap in Zach's Haunted Museum, and he's laying in the floor going, I want to touch her, I want to touch her, like a freaking, teenager with a hard on prom night, and he pissed me off to unimaginable freaking levels when he comes out with, I'm a sensitive. That is how sensitives act. And I actually tweeted him, made sure he saw the damn thing, and said, sell that to someone who wasn't trained by a sensitive, you motherfucker. Because, honest to God, that was the biggest slap in the face to anyone who calls themselves a medium or a sensitive. They don't act like that. Zach acts like that because he's a prima donna drama queen. That's why Zach acts like that. Nothing else. He's a freaking actor. So I'm sitting there and I'm looking at him going, something's not right about that doll. Something's not right about that doll. What the hell's not right about that doll? What the hell's not right about that doll? So I decided to look up pictures, and I found a whole bunch. I found pictures of her in that display case, the big one with the do not open under any circumstances and all of this stuff. I've seen pictures of her being blessed by a priest inside of this display case that no one's allowed to open under any circumstances. And then I saw pictures of her being carried by Lorraine Warren. And I looked at all of those pictures and I set them all up. And then I looked at a still. I actually got a still from the episode where the man is putting her in the chair and pulling her out of the box. Now the box has none of this protection on it, and he's wearing welding gloves and holy water and all sorts of other crap. And that's when I realized it. She's wearing a different dress. The most haunted doll in the world. The thing that sits with all of these symbolisms all over the box and a big warning sign in the front of it. Do not touch the box. Do not open the box. Don't make direct eye contact. Don't feed the animals. Is wearing a different dress. So do you really take this demon out shopping? Making sure she looks pretty for TV? One of the two of them are full of shit. Is what it's basically boiled down to. One of the two are full of shit. It's either Ed and Lorraine Warren are full of shit and there's nothing to the doll, or he's full of shit and he's not even using the real doll. So for all of you out there that might be paying that $125 to go have your picture taken with Annabelle the doll, I can go find a Raggedy Ann doll, and I tell you what, you can have your picture taken with her for $20. That's a deal. We can make up a story to go with it just as easily as they can. So, anything else you want to throw in with this?
No, I think we've covered it. I hate the fact that to me, it's just kind of slapping the damn face everybody else that investigates and does stuff. When you get someone that claims to have an item like that, and then
exactly.
takes it around on a road trip like it's
the Oscar Mayer Wiener Mobile.
Yeah, which I wouldn't mind seeing that.
I have seen that once,
I'd like to see that. I think that would be neat to see the Wienermobile, but I don't know.
That's exactly it. It throws a lot of, to put it in the words of those kids today, it throws a lot of shade on everything the Warrens have done or everything that he does. Which again, who the fuck is he anyway? Nobody ever heard of him before last year. So, now let me try to squeeze our cavalcade of shameless plugging into this as minimally as possible, because as you are listening to this, coming up tomorrow night with Aaron, we have Darren Scholl. He is an investigator and someone who works with Aaron, and also is a big part, I believe, of the Oregon Paracon. That's going to be coming out tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Saturday, January 19th. Of course, then coming up on Wednesday, we have Portals to Enlightenment with psychic medium Sherry. She's going to be welcoming guest David Weatherly. Sorry, I blanked on his name there for a second. Where they're going to be discussing black-eyed children, and something I wish they didn't get into at the end of the program and done at the beginning, but I'm sure she's probably going to have him on again to talk about this, because he gave one of the most interesting facts and talked a little bit about it, and I'd love to have heard more. He recently came out with a book the beginning of January about cryptozoology in Nevada. Now, as you know, Nevada is one of the driest states, the driest state in the United States. Yet, has the highest reports of aquatic cryptozoology.
How is that possible?
That's it. It's like every ounce of water has something reported and a legend with it. It's a fascinating thing. That's what I said. And David, if you happen to be listening to this, if you would like to get on here, I will give you as long as you want to talk about that, because when you said that, literally, I was the one, I'm the producer, so I was listening to it, and I'm sitting there like, my jaw's on the floor. And David Weatherly is not somebody that's going to make a claim without double checking his shit. He knows his stuff. He is an investigator. He actually was going to go back over and I know he had to be sitting there like, oh wait, no. Sandworms, Bigfoot, something like that. But water? Really? In Nevada? I know. So this guy, he had to have checked and rechecked. He probably had people checking his stuff that he had already checked twice before. This guy, so I know when he made that claim, he wrote that book, I know damn well he made sure he was dead on with his facts. And again, like I said, they didn't talk about that long. Oh God, I would love to have heard that. That was what I was like, just fascinated on that one. Of course, after that, we also have, The Dark Side of the Paranormal with June Lundgren and Wendy Stanton. She is going to be talking with the Ghost and Girls Paranormal European team, the folks from England. They're the guests on there this week. Of course, also coming up soon. We're still working out all the details on this. June and Wendy are going to be doing their first ever live broadcast where you're going to be able to actually send questions in chat and all sorts of other stuff, possibly call in and talk to the Demon Seer and Wendy yourself. That is going to be coming up toward the end of the month. Let's see. Let's go. Oh yeah. Then, of course, Monday, almost forgot them. Giving Up the Ghost is going to be coming online for the first time ever this coming Monday, January 21st. It's set for 8 p.m. Central Time, so 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Pacific Time. I have to get all my time zones straight here. And that is going to be covering I believe it was the Hamilton House in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. An interesting little chat. Like I said, they partake in a few adult beverages, so it gets even more interesting toward the end. But, that is, of course, this Monday. And for next Friday, the announcement of announcements, the announcement that I've literally been waiting my entire broadcasting career to make. We are going to have on the Paranormal NightStalker Christopher St. Booth and his wife Rachel Marie, and I have waited to say that name for a decade. I still cannot wait for this. I'm going to drug myself and knock myself out the night before the interview, so I am at fully functioning capability, and like I said, cannot wait for that. Giddy as a schoolgirl on prom night with this one. And I think, of course, I'm not actually sure. Scarycast has got, part 2 of their Planet X special. I believe it's part 2 of 3. There's going to be a third part coming. Part 1's already out. If you want to go onto iTunes, Podcast Addict, Stitcher, any of that, you can find it. Download it. It'll bring you up. Marshall Masters, I believe is the man's name. He's their guest on there. He and Dr. John are going to take a full, conversation about that. It goes about an hour just strictly on Planet X. It's just, like I said, it goes into all the details. It's going to be I believe it's a 3-part interview with part 2 coming out this coming Thursday night. Of course, can't really go because we go off the cuff with this, but this also coming Thursday night, 6 p.m. Pacific Time, around 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Myself and Ryan Stacy of Move On Canada will be doing a Uncharted Case Files after chat. This is going to be, basically, I'm watching the show with you guys live in the chat room. I talk back and forth as well. We will be finding one subject to the one that really catches me is that we need to go deeper into. Of course, the chat room will be open on Spreaker. You can, believe his Twitter is Heed the Word. Ours is at NightStalker Pod. You can send questions on there. If you want to, hashtag the questions, Heed the Word, or World, rather. And you can send us questions on Twitter or in the Spreaker chat or anywhere else you can get in touch with us. Of course, if you want to find any of these, you can go to www.paranormalbc.com. There is a NightStalker Podcast Network page. That will have all of the feeds and a short bio. I'm still updating it as we go because, frankly, between editing the podcast, recording the podcast, and recruiting new members to the podcast, which we've got another one that I hopefully will be adding very soon. If you want to, you can go on to Facebook, Twitter, and follow him. It's ghostquest.net, I believe is what the name of the site is. It's actually, I've talked to him before, but again, he's talking about getting into the podcast world. We're going to see if he isn't interested in coming onto the network with us. But you can find us there, of course, on Spreaker. We are available for download on iTunes, Podcast Addict, Stitcher Podcast, Spotify, SoundCloud. Of course, the Paranormal NightStalker itself is on iHeartRadio. We're working on getting everybody on there, so we will be everywhere you want to be. We are like the Visa of podcasting. To contact us personally, and I'm almost out of breath here, we have the ability of contacting us through Facebook at NightStalker Pod. This is for the network completely. You can contact the Paranormal NightStalker, of course, just in the message, say, I have something for, and name the show. All show mail will come to there. I will get it to the correct people. At NightStalker Pod for Twitter, same there. You can tweet to the shows. Of course, most of them have their own page. We can direct it from there. ParanormalBC.com for PNBC, the NightStalker podcast, or myself, because I am still working with Paranormal North Coast, British Columbia. We're still going. Haven't done a lot here recently, but basically I haven't had time to sleep, so I haven't had time to work with that either. For anything with PNBC, because John and Dan are still active in it, you can go over to Facebook at ParanormalBC or www.paranormalbc.com. And I think I'm out of breath, and I think I'm out of plugs.
Well, I got one more quick thing.
Okay.
The one team from South Carolina.
Oh, yes, I forgot about that. Paul and the South Carolina Paranormal Research and Investigation Team. They do have a podcast. I'm not exactly sure when their next episode is coming out. He's working on that now.
Actually, we're going to record with them on the 26th.
Yeah, next Saturday.
They're coming to Myrtle Beach, which is where I live, and we're going to go out and have a nice dinner at a very nice restaurant that serves really good ribs, and I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, they are going to be our guest for, actually I'm not sure, because we're actually getting ahead pretty good. I'm not sure. We will bring that more, and of course their second episode, they're on the network. You can hear a lot about them by looking up their podcast. It's SC South Carolina Paranormal Research and Investigation. So it's SCPRAI.
Yep. I'm meeting with them. We're going to have dinner, and then we're going to record we're going to go back to our respective locations and go on with you and do a recording. So that's coming up Saturday the 26th. I'm looking forward to meeting them. I've talked to them on Messenger a good bit, and hopefully I may even be working with them some. So that's going to be a good thing.
Yeah. I guess we can also throw out that we do have February is picking right up where January left off, because after all of this, we still have coming in February Brian Holloway, app developer who works on The Witch, The Wiccan, The Portal, a couple of other apps. He's going to come on and talk to us about phone and Android apps working with the paranormal and ITC specifically. We've been trying to get a person that works in these apps on for about a year And finally, he agreed to come on and talk to us and kind of explain, let everybody know exactly what they're working on and how this works in the paranormal. So many people have that question. Well, how does it actually work? Brian has the answers. He is the guy that knows this stuff, and he's coming on to finally talk about it and explain it and maybe help advance it and work with the phone app in the paranormal. Also, we have coming up one of my all-time favorite YouTube videos. Honest to God, on one of my all-time favorites from DNA Paranormal. The video where they call Steve Huff a bullshit artist, and not only calling that, but show how he does it. We're going to have DNA Paranormal on the show also coming in February. So like I said, we have got a lot coming up. And this episode's going to be over 2 hours. I already know that. So,
yes.
Anything else you want to throw in?
No, I think I'm good.
All right. Then for Joel Walling, no, about did the Ken Murphy. For Joel Walling, I'm Michael Smith. No, for Michael Smith, I am Joel Walling. The interview is coming up right after this short commercial break. Then we will be getting on with Jazz Flamand, the writer and host of Giving Up the Ghost. So please stay tuned for that. Hope you enjoy it. And until we talk again, thanks, and we'll talk again soon. All right. Right now joining Michael and I is author and future podcast host coming to the network, actually Giving Up the Ghost. Its first episode is going to be airing Monday, January 21st. We have Jan Flamand. I want to say welcome to the show, Jazz.
Hey, Joel. Thanks for having me. And hi, Michael.
Hello. Nice to meet you.
And you can call me Jazz. JN is my writer's pseudonym, but Jazz is what I go by, JAS. So.
All right. So, Jazz, just give, I guess, the listeners a little bit of a background, a little bit about you, what you're doing, what your ideas bringing in the show is. Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Primarily I write fiction, and I've been writing fiction for quite a few years. I've had periodicals publish short stories in contests and throughout like universities and such, and I have a website, and I love writing fiction. And then about 2 years back, I started listening to podcasts during my work time, my other life, and there's a lot of good podcasts, including your podcast as well, and out there. But I just found for my wanting or my need or my lack of resources, there wasn't really a lot of Canadian content. And then I thought, well, maybe there's something, because I live in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, which I regard pretty haunted, pretty creepy. It's an old town. It used to be like the Old West. It used to be sort of like when this town was first founded, it was basically the gateway to the West is what they called it. So basically you had everything rolling into town, So there's a lot of rich history. It's like Little Chicago, or it was Little Chicago back in the day. And, you had bootlegging, you had prostitution, you had like crime, everything. So there's so much happening here. And I've been on so many ghost tours over the years here locally in town, and it weaves with the historical aspect. And I thought, man, I would love to get my hands on a podcast that would explore a lot of these stories. Like I always like to say it's the what if concept, and that's what I write on. And just like, what if, like, how did that happen? I want to know more. And I just found, as much as great podcasts are out there talking about, fiction, horror stories or scary stories or ghost stories, there really isn't any material for Winnipeg. And I thought, hey, I can do that, because I've personally myself, I started writing a book called Creepy Me. It's about 75% done, of my own personal experiences with the paranormal. And I thought, well, like, that would be awesome. So everybody's got a story to tell, plain and simple. So I collaborated with a friend of mine, my not-so-silent partner. Her name is Sherry. And we've come up with places we'd love to personally investigate. And when I say investigate, I don't necessarily mean, with our EVPs or our Geiger counters or, all the supplies. You good folks, I know in BC, you're part of your paranormal group. We don't plan on looking for ghosts. We just want to see what we can absorb. I feel sometimes when I go to certain places, I get a certain feel. I've been touched by ghosts, by the way. I know that sounds kind of weird, but I mean, I get certain,
Oh.
and my podcast is not touched by a ghost because it now attracts a whole different range of people.
Yeah, that would be a whole other genre right there.
A whole different jam, yeah. So in saying that, we just came up with a list of places we'd love to get the history on. Like, we want to not just go to places, we want to actually go to like the Manitoba archives and dig up who was there and what happened there. Maybe try and piece together a little bit of everything to kind of put puzzles together, you know, to kind of compare the before with what's happening with the after. Cher as well, her own house is haunted. So we want to do a remote from there as well, to sit and get some vibes and, you know, stuff like that. And that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Well, it definitely sounds interesting, and you're right. Being here in British Columbia, I'm, as you can tell from my accent, I'm not originally from British Columbia. But when I came up here, basically for PNBC, when I started talking with John and Dan, and we started talking about actually doing this, I started looking for groups that are around here. And basically, in British Columbia, for the paranormal side of things, there is us up here and the Vancouver Paranormal Society, which I'm also a part of.
Right.
In the entire area of British Columbia. And then as you go east, rather, I'm used to living on the East Coast. I'm on the West Coast now. As you go east, it seems like they start spreading out more and more and more. And there's entire chunks of area with like no known history to them. And I'm not even talking in the paranormal side. Like when I started, we did the Terrace Heritage Park here. There were things about that I was finding out that people had no clue, no idea at all. Like the largest military revolt happened in Terrace. It was 1,500 Canadian troops during World War II. This kind of stuff, and it's like this is history. And even though it had nothing to do with the paranormal side of it, it's still history that is literally setting in the middle of this town that nobody knows. Right. There's so much in Canada that there is a rich history, but unless you look in the right spot or talk to the right person, you're never going to know it's there.
Yeah, exactly. And, I never really was too much, like I'm a proud Winnipegger. I mean, I've been born and raised here. I know no other place. But, aside from that, you go on, like, say, the ghost tours that I went on. I went on one, I think the first one was like in 2003, 2004. It's not around any longer, and he was somehow associated, I don't know if it was a copyright infringement, but his tour was called Ghost to Ghost, which was a play off on, the famous Coast to Coast radio broadcast, right? And this gentleman, I would say, was half haunted history and half historical, and the way he wove it together, it just, like, blew my mind, and I'm like, I gotta know more. Like, plain and simple. So I've always had a fascination with the paranormal based on my own experiences. But it just kind of drove to the forefront. It's like, what am I waiting on? What am I waiting for? So, my fiction has a lot of spooky elements to it and stuff, sort of like the what if and stuff. But, I want to know more, and I'll give you a historical fact right off the hop, for example. One of the things on this ghost tour, we went down Memorial Boulevard, which is down the street from what we call the legislature building, which is like, like the government building where they do everything provincially speaking, like a Congress, I guess you would say for you. And down the block, there's a statue, and it was the William Stephenson statue, and he was actually a well-known, and we parked in front of the old jail where the old gallows were on top of it. So this gentleman, he's like bouncing around telling us all this stuff. So we're parked in front of the spooky jail, the old jail. It's not in use anymore. It's just a government building, but they do have ghost tours when through there sometimes. And like people were that's where they did the hangings and stuff. Anyway, so the statue for William Stevenson, he starts explaining he was like a World War spy, born and raised here in Winnipeg. He sort of like a double spy for British intelligence, and then he kind of crossed the German line, I believe, or something to that effect. But what's really cool about all that, aside from the fact that he was born and raised here in an area called Point Douglas, is that I believe it's Ian Fleming, the one who wrote, all the James Bond novels. Yeah. He was friends with him, and he actually patterned his spy off of William Stephenson in Winnipeg.
Really?
So it's one of those little knowns, like, wow. And I did Google it or research it at that point after. I'm like, he's right, you know. But I mean, when you hear that story, they'll say he was patterned off of, I can't remember, somebody else historical or whatever. But no, like even the plaque even says outside statue. So just cool little.
Yeah, that's amazing. You know, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. These little, like, how many people walk past that and have no idea? Right. Yeah.
And to further give you a cool connection that I have to William Stevenson, one of my best friends, I'm the godmother to her 2 girls. When she got married a second time, she moved in with her husband in a house in Point Douglas, and that was originally William Stevenson's house. And when his dad had redone the walls and stuff in the 70s, they found artifacts and stuff that they actually turned over to the archives for keeping, or to University of Manitoba or something. Yeah.
Well, that is interesting. It is an amazing connection there. I mean, it's like,
it's a big town, but it's a small town. It's just like 6 degrees of separation. You're always going to know somebody or something, or who knows somebody or who knows something. So.
Oh yeah, I'm from a place kind of like that. You always have that person that knows somebody.
Exactly.
No matter what it is, it's like if you don't know them, you know somebody that does.
Yeah, pretty much. So, and you know, extending past Winnipeg, there are so many little towns. A lot of the towns that popped up along the railroad when the railway came in the late 1800s and then early 1900s. Sorry. In fact, like, there's a little town about an hour from here called Woodridge, Manitoba, where my family comes from, like my dad, and like I've done my family tree, and we're like all over the place and stuff. But currently my dad lives out there. I have an aunt, uncle, I have cousins who live out there, and it's you know, primarily French-Canadian town. And it's along the CP, the Canadian Pacific Rail Line, or the CN, I'm not too sure, but it's a busy rail line. Like, you hear the train come through like almost every hour. It's really annoying. But, for example, that little town is so haunted. Like, relatives have been telling me stories since I was a kid about the things they saw and the things they heard. And there is actually a very famous story, and I did write about it, and it got published on one of the websites. It's called The Ghost Lights of Woodridge, and if you were to Google it, you'd find some information about it. Basically, it's an orb that was seen. You're going to say something, Joel? Sound familiar?
Well, actually, I was about to say, I believe I've read that.
Yeah. But it's a true story, and it was actually, I'm proud to say, like, for all the cousins that I have in my family, there's sort of like a disconnect between me and the older cousins, and I'm closer to the younger cousins, sort of like a lull in between. And I would always tell, you know, all the kids ghost stories. I drag them off into the bedroom at my grandparents' house, and they tell all the kids like little, you know, made-up ghost stories and stuff, and they'd run screaming and whatever. And then I guess my grandfather wanted to fix my wagon one time, and you know, he would encourage me, and he would tell me ghost stories. And then he told me around the time I was about 9 or 10 about how there was like, you know, in those days there's no city lights, there's no street lights, nothing. They had lanterns to guide them around at nighttime, and quiet little, basically known as like I want to say they cut wood for a living, right? Like woodsmen, you know, they did cords of wood and they sold it and stuff. And I'm not saying simple times, but I'm just saying like that was the main industry out logging. That's what I want to say. Main logging industry out there. And he says back in the day when he was a younger man, and him and his buddies, they'd get together and they'd make their way into town to the local drinking hole, and they'd always have their lanterns and they'd watch out for each other and whatever. And there was like a local there was a local drunk or fellow that liked to partake in the drink. Let's not be critical, right? And he lived on the outskirts. In those days, too, they had lots to encourage people to move out there, whether it was farming or logging or whatever. They would sell off homesteads, right? And then they would try and bring people more to populate the area, so the government would sell like homesteads, right? And this gentleman lived on the outskirts of town, and I've seen his place, actually. I've seen what's left of his place. Just might have been a 2-room house, and all you see is the border left and stuff. And he would come in on the track. He would follow the tracks into town so he could go drinking with his friends and the buddies and the menfolk and stuff. And I guess a few days went by after Joe came to town, and Joe never came home. So, of course, people go out looking for him around the tracks. And like I said before, this little town, where you got trains coming through, right, once every hour. Well, I guess Joe must have fell, hit his head, and went unconscious possibly or something. So then a train must have come through and decapitated him. So all they found was the body, and they never found the head, right? So this would be like the 30s, So by then you figure, well, animals could have dragged off the head, anything. Like this is like thick in the bush. I always say I could hide a body out there and nobody would find it. But that's not to say that's a plan. I'm just saying.
Yeah, not a plan, just a good to know in case you ever having to need it.
I'm just saying. So, but in any event, the way the story goes, my grandfather told me, he said, they continue on with their daily lives, and him and his buddy would wait with the lanterns, waiting for this other buddy, Ben or whoever, and then they see Ben coming. And as the light of Ben's lantern gets closer, keep in mind this is a while after the first gentleman passed away on the track, they're standing there, and then he swore to me, he says, within a few feet, this glowing orb would drift past them and float. And it wasn't Ben, and it wasn't like, it was the ghost lights of Woodridge, it was the orb. And they always say what it was. It was Joe, the gentleman who lived outside of town. He was looking for his body. They say the orb is his head looking for the body. So.
Oh, wow. That is actually pretty neat. That's, like I said, when you said the name and started describing it, it's like, I know I've read this before. Because, it's one of those, when I first came up to the area, I started doing all of the paranormal stuff before I came here.
For sure.
And so as soon as I came up here, I'm starting to go, okay, well, now that I know about the Southern ghost history, I've got to learn about learn about here. And I started just going through and any type of website and book and anything I could get my hands on. I've always been like that because it's all part of the research side of it for me.
Yeah.
And it's something that, it's like, and it's funny because you actually hear a lot of similar things like this, lights around. Like I know in North Carolina, actually pretty much because Michael lives in South Carolina, I'm from North Carolina, like pretty much right in between us is,
wouldn't that make you guys enemies? Like you're not supposed to be friends then, right? Isn't that how that goes?
Oh, no, they're okay. The southern part, they're okay with North Carolina. That's as far north though as you're allowed to go.
Okay. So you're not, you don't have to kill them or anything like that.
No, it's actually funny. I actually moved to South Carolina originally because I was born in Kentucky and my family moved to South Carolina, and we were total cold shoulders until someone started talking to us. One person finally did, and then they're like, "Oh, you're country folk. Oh, you're fine then. You're not one of those damn Yankees. We didn't need any more of them down here." And we're like, "Really? Is it that bad?" And it's like, yeah, there's a part of Charleston, South Carolina. It's called North Charleston. And according to him, North Charleston was too far north for him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So some of the South, they're stuck. They're not even we're not even talking like the 1950s. We're talking it's still back in the 1850s. It's still bad down there. Some
deep,
places.
Very deep. Yeah. But there is actually a book that was written back in the 70s or the 80s. No, probably the 80s, I would think. And it was called Haunted Canada. And this lady wrote the story about the ghost lights of Woodridge. I think some family members even kept the newspaper articles because there was a time when it was rampant. Like, it was like almost somebody was seeing these ghost orbs in the 70s, like, almost every couple of weeks or, like it was very, very rampant. It was just constantly happening, all these sightings. And the way the lady had written the story in this book, and I'd read it, and I'm like thinking, that's not the story my grandfather told me. So I have the only version of that story. You know what I'm saying? Because it was firsthand, or I guess secondhand from him. And the other stories are the ghost live. If anybody sees it, a lot of hunters would see it. Dogs would react. Hunters' cars would go dead, like the battery wouldn't start, the lights wouldn't go on, like it would immobilize vehicles, anything electronic. It was also said that it was seen mostly around the conductor, not the conductor, but the, I'm not too sure what you would call them, but there would be like a house along the tracks that belonged to the purser of the railroad, like the person that was sort of like in charge of that stop. Yeah. I'm not sure what his name, and his family would live in that house, and apparently people would see it go through that house, like the family and stuff, and my dad's even seen it. He went out hunting in the 70s, and he sat in the marsh in the bush, and he saw it expand and contract. So he said he must have sat there for an hour. Well, first off, he was probably scared to move, And my dad's not scared of anything, but he was just like enthralled with it. He was just like, you hear the stories, you see it, like, what does he do? And he sat there and he just watched it expand and contract and would get bigger, 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 and then smaller, smaller, smaller. It would hover about 3 feet off the ground. A lot of people would always say, the skeptics, oh, that's just swamp gas. Well, there's not a lot of swamp around there, and for the places that this orb or these orbs will be seen, there's no swamp. It's roads, it's old country roads. And in fact, I think my mom and my dad, when they were dating, or whatever you call it, courting, I don't know, whatever, they were actually driving out in the country, and it would follow them. They had seen it one time together in the car. It would travel along in the bush and would keep up with the car. And every time they would turn a section, it would keep up with the car. And that happened for about 15, 20 minutes before they headed back into town. So I do know a lot of close people that have seen this, and I want to go out there and investigate now.
Oh, yeah, that would definitely be one to to try to find. Because it reminds me a lot of one. It's called the Mako Light, and it was the Mako train line that ran from Wilmington into South Carolina and then north through Wilmington. But actually, I had a friend that, actually, it was my friend's father. He said during the summer when he was in school, after the school let out and everything, that's how they made like a little extra money and had stuff to do, because him and a bunch of his friends would stand down there and wait for people to come to try to see the Mako Light. And he'd take them down to where it was seen the most. He's like, he said, God, I probably saw it 15, 20 times in 1 year.
Wow. But that's interesting, the connection that was a real line as well, hey?
Yeah. Not really the same type of, because what the belief of the Mako Light was that basically what happened was there was a train that, had stalled on the tracks. Something had happened with its system, and it was, they couldn't get it moving. So the conductor had left the train while the engineer was working on it, trying to get it moving, and was coming back down the line with a lantern to warn any other trains that were coming through that his train was stopped. So he was trying to get far enough down the line so they would have enough time to hit their brakes and stop. And one of them plowed into him. And the light is, believed to be the light that, of him trying to wave off the train that was coming toward him. Oh. Funny enough, actually, my first investigation, we're doing this, and it was a huge, my first real investigation with the first team I was with. We were doing this big family, it was a farm at one time, like multi-families lived on, or multi-members of the same family lived on it. I think at one time it was like 200 acres or something like that. It was huge, and it had been sold down. But we still had a good, I think 25 or 30 acres that we were covering. And there's just all kinds of activity on this farm. It was just huge. There's all sorts of stuff that had happened there, and all this just through history. Had like the Cherokee Trail of Tears went through it.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that. Yes.
We had stuff during the Civil War happening there. Stuff, I think, even during the Revolutionary War had happened there. But we're going and we're doing, and I've run into these huge railroad pylons and the stuff like the wood that would connect the tracks. And I was actually talking to the owner then. They're like, oh yeah, well when they tore up the old Mako line, I got all the wood off of it. Oh. So the actual Mako train tracks were on this farm now. They took all the wooden spots out of it and moved it over to this farm when they tore up the line, because they had stopped using the train line in like the, I think they stopped using it in the 50s and tore it up in like the 80s or 90s.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, it's like I said, it's just interesting how train tracks, for some reason, I don't know if they're a good conductor of energy, if it's the wood it's part of or what, but they hold on to a lot of stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
And of course the
trains. I totally believe in that, yes.
And the trains, they create a lot of friction and energy just in themselves.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So,
but sorry not to interrupt you.
No, go on.
I was just going to say, another story my grandfather had told was he had gotten up in the middle of the night, and this is like on my father's side, my grandfather, out in the country there. He had gotten up in the middle of the night to, he couldn't sleep or whatever, and for some reason, you know, in the country they don't leave the door, they don't lock the doors, they leave them open and stuff, and they live close to the railroad track and that, and whatever else, and he got up in the middle of the night, and he just wasn't feeling right, so he went to go get a drink or something from the kitchen, and he saw his buddy sitting in a chair, you know, like sitting in a chair, you know, and he's like, oh, are you okay? Or was it his buddy's father? I can't remember how that part of the story went, but it was somebody he knew. He recognized him, and he thought, well, that's kind of strange that he wandered in the house, but he's like, oh, are you okay? Did you need a rest or whatever? And then he didn't say anything. He looked at him, and then he disappeared, right? And then the next day, when the train came in, it actually brought his body. He had passed, and nobody knew that this gentleman passed, but he had passed in the city, and then the body came back to be buried off the train.
So
when you're saying trains and energy, it just reminded me of that story.
Well, you know, that's another, you know, that's actually, that falls into a couple of different ones. Even the fact that they had seen before they knew he was dead, it was kind of like a little bit of a message.
Like he's saying
I
goodbye.
guess his way of getting his chance to say goodbye, because I would take it that his death was rather sudden, or at least unexpected.
Yeah, I think he was in the army or something to that effect. Like it was something that just happened so fast. Like, you know, because back in those days, like, you know, the 20s and the 30s, they didn't have the phone. Not everybody had a phone. You know, like, I mean, it was like just message at the general store and stuff, and
yeah, it was.
And then everybody lived so sparse. You know.
Yeah, you know, especially I've noticed that with up here, because you know, in some of the places that I've, you know, remote up here, as I've explained a lot to my friends and everything in the States still, Canadian remote and U.S. remote are two very different remotes.
Oh.
You know, when you look at like a remote area or a small town here, you may actually travel 45 minutes to an hour and not run into anything or anyone.
No, exactly. Yeah.
You know, down in the States, it's basically, if you go 20 minutes in any one direction, you're going to hit another town or another city or something.
Unless you're driving to Saskatchewan and you're like lucky if you see a tree. They're on the endangered species list.
Oh, that bad there.
Saskatchewan, yeah, not much there.
Oh, really? I haven't gone that far.
Saskatchewan by any means. Lovely place.
I've seen a lot, heard some stuff about there. I want to see more Canada. I mean, I came across the U.S. straight into British Columbia and then up to here in Kitimat.
Okay.
So I never really got a lot in Canada.
Right. So yeah, lots of beautiful places to visit, and and like, you know, when we go on remotes and stuff, we want to definitely go out to Woodridge, Manitoba, see my dad. He's got tons of stories, like, and just other relatives and any of the small towns around there too, because I mean, you know, like energy is still here. Like I believe that when people pass on, I mean, whether or not you believe in like the next life or, you know, reincarnation, which I do as well. But I mean, at the same time, it's like there's got to be a reason for the energy that's left behind. Like, you know, like our bodies are a shell, is how I look at it.
Yeah.
You know, like we're just a shell, and there has to be something better, different out there, something more.
Absolutely, I agree with that. I'm going to throw in just a real quick commercial break.
You go ahead.
Okay, we'll be right back after this and go into a little bit more about Winnipeg, and as you're calling it the most haunted, or one of the most haunted cities, we'll figure out exactly what all it's got going on there in just a second. Now, actually, all I need to do is like give it a second for dead air, because I put the ads in post-production.
Yeah, no problem.
So, okay, we're back, and now, like I said, you were talking about how Winnipeg is one of the most haunted places, or haunted cities in Canada. What are some of the other things that either you've experienced or legends that you've heard about, things like that?
For sure. Our first episode that we've already recorded, it's called Hamilton House. Hamilton House it is, again, one of those gems that, you know what, there's thousands of people that drive past it every day and on their way to downtown, which is like our central part of the town. And Hamilton House, basically there was a gentleman, a doctor, like well-educated doctor, come from, you know, a very well-respected family. He was like an MLA, which is the member of the Legislative Assembly. He was a school trustee. Again, this is going back into like the 19 teens, 1920s, around there. Well-respected gentleman. He was like the first physician in a part of the town called Elmwood. He would ride around like on his bike and he'd make house calls, you know, and he was very well respected, all around good guy. I mean, nothing wrong with him or his family, but his son died. And then it was around that time when his son died from the flu. I believe that was in 1919 or 1918. It was just after the war finished, because it was the Spanish flu, I believe, and they figured a lot of the soldiers had brought the Spanish flu back. And he had a son, a daughter, and 2 twins. And one of the twins died, and they said it was his favorite twin. And he had it in his head that there's got to be something out there. This beautiful soul cannot just be here and then gone the next day. So from that started a journey for Dr. Hamilton, where he actually started doing research into the afterlife. He started looking into seances. He did the ectoplasma, so he's very renowned. So if you Google Dr. Thomas Hamilton, I believe Thomas or Glenn is his son's name. T.G. Hamilton is his initials. And he basically hosted seances in this house in Elmwood, conducted experiments, because he was very, very skeptical but open-minded. So he basically, you know, the practical doctor side of him, and he did all this while he was actually a practicing physician. And his work after he passed even continued on with his wife and his daughter. And there's volumes and volumes and volumes of books on his work and research. They connected with a medium. She would do the bulk of the seances. They would do the typical, you know, closing off the windows. Everything was sealed shut. And then he'd even brought in a lawyer figure, because the lawyer was reputable, right? You know, and he validated. Nobody went in with anything. Nobody came out with anything, you know, devices and stuff. And they did all these documented science experiments. He would take photographs in the dark with a series of, like, you know, camera equipment. But back in those days, like, I mean, you'd have to be rich to own. And back in those days as well, you couldn't falsify, like with Photoshop, like now, or anything like that. Yeah. So they have pictures of like ectoplasm coming out of people's orifices, and just I want to say the research he did in the field at that time was beyond that time, you know, for what they had available to them. So Hamilton House is really cool, and that was our first episode. Haunted, I want to get more stories on that and do a little more investigation, because more people talk about his seance work and such, you know, based on what's in there. And interestingly enough, it's actually just down the street from one of the hugest graveyards in the city. Like, I'm talking huge and old, creepy-ass graveyards, okay?
Oh, wow.
Oh, we swear a lot on our podcast, by the way. Sorry.
Okay, we do too.
And I'm trying to keep it together here, because I'm a lady, sort of. And we drink a little bit too, but that's okay. But yeah, so like, you know, you could just imagine if this Hamilton House was a portal, let's just say, if you believe in portals, you know, and such, and you have a graveyard not more than 500 feet away, right? And you're having seances and you invite all these entities in from this graveyard. I don't know. So that's really interesting. And that's going to be an ongoing piece as we get more information. But that's why our first episode is actually very, very longer than what I would have liked it to be. But as far as places in the city, we have hotels from the turn of the century. There's the legendary Fort Garry Hotel we discuss. There's the Marlborough Hotel that we'll be discussing. The Dalvin Art Museum, which is interesting. The Dalvin Art I've had a connection with a little bit as well myself. Nothing haunted, nothing of feel. I can go into places and I pick up an energy. I don't know if you've ever experienced that yourself. Like if you've gone into a place and something's not right, or at ease or at peace, you know. And I've been in the Delton Museum, and basically the first Prime Minister of Canada was John A. Macdonald, and his son, Hugh A. Macdonald, was a prominent lawyer, and he moved to Winnipeg. And he had this house built. So at the time, it had flush toilets. Again, this was like, the early 1900s. It had flush toilets. It had electricity. It had everything of the finest of that day. And it's well preserved. Like, it's a museum that you can walk in now. Beautiful, beautiful old Victorian-style home. And he was a magistrate. So he basically, he worked for the courts. He was of the highest, I guess, regard here in Winnipeg at the time. And, so basically he'd walk to work and stuff. Maybe I've jumped too far. But, what I was going to say about my story about this place, my own personal connection is my mother-in-law was actually a director for a while in there. She was mostly looking after the gift store that they had built onto it. And there was a couple times I'd helped her in setting up. They'd asked her to come back and set up the gift shop for what they call Heritage Days, where they open up all the old buildings and you can walk in. Maybe Heritage Days or Open Doors Winnipeg is what it's called. So you can go explore all these older buildings or houses, just phenomenal. And I helped her set up. So I had free reign of this house. There's 400 people waiting to get into this house to check it out, and I'm just walking around it however I choose and checking things out. And again, like, I usually get a vibe. She had told me that years prior when she had worked there, because that day she was just helping out. But years ago when they were building, and you know what they say, when you start building or messing around with buildings, usually things happen. Spooky things happen. Spooky things, unexplained things happen. And she had said quite often she'd be in the basement and the delivery door at the back of the entrance would ring. Well, that delivery door had not been connected for probably 40, if not 50 years, right? Especially now with them renovating. So she would often hear the service bell, like to the delivery, ring, but it's not connected anymore. And she'd go to the back door just to verify, and there was nobody there. She'd smell cigar smoke throughout the house because Hugh A. Macdonald smoked cigars, so that was quite an often thing. And when I went to go help her, she would say, go down to the basement and see if you can find a display rack or whatever. And I'd be like, okay, I'll go, I'll go check it out. So I'd go downstairs, and it's all well lit. There's really no part of the basement more intimidating than the other. And then it was good down there. Like, the feel of relief and just very calm and very peaceful. I didn't want to leave the basement. I was looking for excuses to go back down in the basement, and it wasn't creepy. It had beautiful structured flooring, not concrete. Like, of the day, it was in such well-preserved shape. And I keep looking. I wandered around. There was a stack of books in one corner, and it said Architectural Winnipeg, 1919. And they were all brand new. Like, you cracked the books. Like, what is the stack of books doing down here? Like, just amazing. And you'd look, and there was some old machinery, some old sewing machines, and there was lots of, older, well-preserved, kept clean and everything. And I felt so good down there. Like, I had a really good vibe, a really good energy. And then, not to sound, because those times I didn't want to freak people out with what I felt and what I didn't feel. And then I'd say to Margaret, my mother-in-law, I go, I don't know, but there's something about the basement. I really like it down there. Like, I'm usually getting creeped out about these places and stuff, but this one's okay. Like, there's something really okay happening down there, right? And then she looked at me, and then she paused, and she goes, oh. She says, well, you know why? And I go, I don't know why. And she said that when Hugh A. Macdonald, because him being the magistrate, he'd walk, like, downtown from his home, like, just further down the street, I'd say probably 8 blocks, let's say. And he'd come home at night, and this is turn of the century again, like, I don't want to date it, like maybe 1904, 1905, ish, like around there. And when he'd come home at night, he'd constantly find street kids everywhere, like street kids, like, the shoe-shining kids, the kids begging for money, the kids that didn't have a home or maybe just didn't want to go home. Well, back in those days, even in this city, God forbid, maybe it was late 1800s, I don't know, the police would pick up child vagrants. They would throw them in the Vaughan Street jail for a couple of nights just to get them off the street, like, because it was prominent in Victorian era. You don't want ragamuffins hanging out in the streets, dirty little kids, right? Urchins or whatever. So Hugh had a soft place in his heart, and it devastated him. There was only so much he could do, but he wanted to make sure that these kids didn't get swept up at the end of the night by the police and thrown in jail. So he would actually approach the kids, and he would say to them, "Hey," he said, "do you got a place to sleep for tonight?" So quite often, and it was all legit, like none of the stuff you would think of nowadays, like, come to my house.
Not doing anything to those kids.
I got wine in the van, that kind of stuff. Like, anyway, he would actually take them home. He would have because he had staff, he had maids and cooks and whatnot. He had like a full serving staff. They would actually take care of the kids for a few days in the basement, and that's where he would house the kids. The kids would stay safe in the basement. They would be fed and looked after, and they would play. And that's what they did. So
that's awesome.
So when Margaret told me that, I'm like, oh, okay, well, that does explain a lot, because usually basements creepy out. But that one had a very, very happy vibe.
It continued the good energy that was there from when he would do those things, because probably a lot of those kids, that was like a dream come true for them for the night.
Oh, for sure. Water, running water, electricity, and because they say he died in the house, I believe, and so did his son. He had a son that was crippled to some effect. I'm not too sure what his ailment was, but his son died in the house, and a lot of people say you can often see the son looking out from his bedroom window onto the street. So
really?
They're still there. Yeah.
Awesome. That's like, it's funny that everyone seems to remember, or I guess it's like with anything else, negative seems to be the thing that draws people, Right. You hear bad news much faster than you hear good news. Totally. And a lot of the times people forget that, sometimes there are good energy. And they're good, right. I guess you'd say hauntings, if you want to call them that, this person, like I said, to these kids, there's probably several of them that was the first time they'd ever seen actual electricity or been in a room that actually had electricity or running water.
Or fed or cared for like a hot meal.
So that energy, for lack of a better term, like it infected there, and it's still there today. You can still feel it when you go in there. That was a welcoming place. It was a comforting place to them. Like I said, it's a lot of the time we seem to forget that it doesn't have to be bad.
Right.
There's plenty of good that's happened in life, and it doesn't have to be bad. It doesn't always have to be something negative that we're feeling or we're detecting.
Exactly.
You can walk into a place that was a joyous place and you're going to feel good. You're going to feel happy.
Yeah. Like I can sense when I go to some place and there's something really bad. I can't remember where it was I walked out of. I'm like, I can't be here. Like you just feel overwhelmed. I'd almost compare it to feeling hollow, like not like a sense of fear, but like sort of like a sense of like a white, I wouldn't say a white light, but just I almost myself can sometimes feel like anxious or see-through, like transparent, and I kind of feel hollow. And, like just a negative energy, like just, whereas like the good energy, I feel like full and copacetic, and I feel very at ease and tranquil, whereas like I feel when I go into a place and I feel upheaval, I feel anxious, I feel like something's missing. Like I literally feel like I have no core when I go into some place that has bad energy. So, or a place, like it doesn't have to be a house, obviously, but.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes you get it in just just random areas when you're standing or you're walking around through,
Yeah.
Like I talked to someone a while back about we were doing a public investigation actually, and the place we were investigating has a very bad recent history.
Ooh.
And they were kind of, well, you should thought about that. You shouldn't do it there. You shouldn't. I mean, it has I think the woman called it a checkered past.
Okay.
And I was like, if you really want to look at it, there's probably not many places on this planet that doesn't have a checkered past.
For sure.
I was like, yeah. This is a park. That's why we picked it. It's got open spaces. It's easily accessible. We don't have to, we're not, we're taking some risk in running into a bear or something, but other than that, we're pretty much good on all fronts.
Right.
And it's like, but like I said, there was gosh, I think it was in the 90s. A man actually killed, I think it was 3 people there.
Ugh.
So they were like, that's a little more recent history than what some of the other ones would be, but still,
Yeah.
it's like, I told him, it's not like we're here looking for that. It's not.
Right.
But it's, it's all in the area and the local folklore and any of that. And that's one of my big passions. I've always loved folklore. So is there any of the Winnipeg folklore that's really kind of stuck with you or drawn your attention to it or something you want to go looking for?
I mean, a lot of things that we're really curious in investigating or checking out. When I mean investigating, again, like I say, not all the gadgets and stuff. I mean, that's great. But I mean more so like what could have happened here. So we want to go through archives and check things out. I want to find out, like there's other places like parks, cemeteries. There's the St. Andrew's Church was supposed to be very haunted. Apparently they used to practice Satan worship in the basement back in the 1800s. I mean, like this place has been settled, like going back to like the early 1800s to mid 1800s, like, when you have civilization and stuff in towns and stuff. I mean, there were wars, there were fighting, like the English was fighting with the French. We have Louis Riel, which was the great rebellion Métis leader here in the province. Things we want to investigate. I mean, you know how you had said before, like there's similar things all throughout North America and different places. Like we want to find out more, not just about orbs, but like I want to find out if anybody has any stories of like black-eyed children here locally. I mean, that's another thing too. We want to reach out to people and ask, what are your stories? What do you know? What do you want to find out about? Is your place haunted? Sasquatch, UFOs, delving a little bit into that, as well, because that there is a lot of stories of that as well. So, I mean, we have a lot of the cryptid mythology happening here as well. Like they say, even it's a hotbed. I think like last year, the year before, there was 257. I'm just throwing a number at you, but it was a very high number of UFO sightings here in the province and Winnipeg as well. I've seen a couple of things I can't explain either, whether or not, I don't know, good night, bad night, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I mean, share my I like to call us co-curators or audio curators is what I think we'd like to be referred as, because we're kind of merging history with hauntings and just kind of like figuring things out. She has got a really awesome UFO story that personally happened to her when she was a kid, and there was like 4 of them, and they all saw the same thing. So, out in the country again, of course, but like just mythology, like just lore, like folklore, like the orb would be like a folklore story, I would believe. Black shadow people. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a real good one. My dad has a really awesome story about that too.
Really?
I can tell it to you real quickly.
Sure.
Basically the way it's seen, the black shadow person, if you see a black shadow person out of the corner of your eye, like not a full-on figure per se, but if you happen to catch a glimpse, and if you try to, say, swivel your head to catch it, it disappears. What he tells me, what he believes, and what he's heard is basically somebody's put a curse on you with a bad shaman or an evil witch, like a bad person, has paid somebody to put a curse on you. And it's that evil shaman or evil witch or a person who's cast a spell on you, a bad luck spell. And if you catch or make eye contact with this thing before it dissolves, you will have like 7 years bad luck, like folklore stuff like that,
Yeah. Oh, that's
that
interesting.
happened to him, and he had 7 years of bad luck. So there you go.
Really?
Yeah. He said he was driving down the highway, and then out of the corner of his eye, he saw something, like the outline of a person sitting in his passenger seat. And he turned to look, and it just vanished.
Oh, wow.
And then he says he knows a few other people that's happened to. So, I mean, who's to say, like, if you have bad luck, and I'm what you call an optimistic skeptic, right? Just like anything. You won't believe it or know it until it's actually happened to you. I have plenty of people around me don't believe in ghosts, no matter what I tell them. They believe I've seen things and I've felt things. But until it happens to them, they're not going to buy into it, and that's cool. Like, everybody's got their own belief system. So I mean, the black shadow person, does that fall in line with, what you hear, like on, out in the world on the paranormal scope, black shadow people? I've also heard things where black shadow people are interpreted as to be somebody's future self, and they've come back. Do you know what I'm saying? Like they're there,
Yeah.
and it has a lot to do with the spirit and the energy, right? And I would almost tend to go with that bit more, right? Because they're not a full-formed person or shape or entity.
Yeah. I've had a lot of experience with those, actually.
Yeah.
Again, it was the place I was talking about earlier, this family farm. The owners that currently own it are not the ones from the original, the original family. The original family sold it off completely. But they have a small family plot there still.
Okay.
And I was there with the owner's daughter and the head of the team I was with, and we were doing an EVP session at this old family plot. And I literally saw one probably, I'd say maybe 10 to 15 feet away from me.
Okay.
Like looking from behind a tree. So we'd actually been told that her uncle likes to drink. And she's like, she tells us this the night when we're setting up to do the investigation. She's like, "Nah, I told him twice, you're going to be here. But he does like to have a drink or two."
Okay.
We're like, okay. And like, if you see him, start telling him who you are immediately. Like, wow. Well, he also has a tendency to shoot people if you don't know him.
Oh, God.
I was like, okay. So we're standing there and I see this shadow kind of peeking around a tree. And my first thought is, oh, great, it's her uncle. So my hands are up and I'm yelling at the top of my lungs. I'm here with your niece. She's standing right here. We're the people she told you about. Please don't shoot us. That's what I'm thinking. Oh God, he's gotten drunk and he's come out to, so it, the thing doesn't move and it doesn't say anything. So then I think, okay, well, I'm figuring this is a small town outside of Wilmington, so I'm thinking maybe they talked around and some of the local kids have decided, okay, let's go see what they're doing. So I just try to coax whoever it is out, or at least to get them to say something, and finally then I get a little irritated, so I'm like, well, fine, if you're not coming out to me, I'll come in to you. So I start in through this little family plot, and when I get about, I'd say maybe within 5 feet of the shadow, it runs directly across in front of me, and it doesn't make a sound.
Oof.
Through bushes, overgrown brush, all of this, not a sound. I mean, not a leaf crack, not a twig break.
Right.
Which freezes me dead in my tracks. Everything I had electric on me died completely, including spare batteries I was carrying.
Wow.
They were completely drained. So I'm still like, now I'm after it. I'm going to figure out what this is. And the head of the group, his name's Matt DeVita, and he starts hollering. He's like, "You need to come out. You need to come out." And I'm like, no. He's like, "There's more of them." And as I look, these things have formed a semicircle around me, and they are literally like closing in around me. So needless to say, by that time I'm like, okay, I was gone. I was out of that area. I was gone. That was it was time to move then. That's, like I said, when I saw the first one and it ran in front of me, I was just like, holy crap. Then when I start looking at this and there's like, it's gone from 1 to maybe 6 or 7. And
that's what all my bad dreams are made of, right there. Right there.
Oh, yeah. I'm like, okay, I'm leaving now. Goodbye. And I was gone. I didn't know at the time everything I had on me died. I did
how fast after that did you have your first beer or case?
That was actually in like the middle of the investigation. We actually went for probably another 3 hours. 2 or 3 hours.
And your thoughts as to what that possibly could have been? Like, what do you think?
I honestly have no idea.
Wow. Like, one is one thing, but like a group of them?
Yeah, and to turn up the way it did. And a lot of people talk about when they're near a shadow person, you get a like a feeling of dread or fear and stuff like that. I got nothing. Because I literally, I mean, you can't really, I guess you'd say, yeah, I was a little shooken up and everything after it moved the first time. But when I went into the woods originally, I was going in there with the impression that it was a person. Because I honestly thought it was one of the local kids, the teenagers hearing, okay, they're going to have ghost hunters in there. We're going to go see what they're doing or try to scare them.
Right.
Think there's kids are in there playing around. So I'm seeing this because the way everything was lit and everything, all I could see was barely the outline, like just of the head and a shoulder, and it dogging around a tree. And I'm thinking, okay, this is someone playing a prank. That's why I went into the woods. But then when it's running in front of me and I can't hear anything, and then when all of a sudden there starts more of them start popping up, I have no idea. But of course, by then, they say everybody has that fight or flight response.
Right.
Well, by that time, fight done packed its bags and left. Flight was the only thing left. And I was moving as fast as I could move to get out of those woods.
As my husband would say, feet don't fail me now.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. And I'm just like, oh, I gotta move. Oh, I gotta go. It really shook, it actually shook the guy, his bat up. It did bad to him. He was too scared. We had, they had ran a flea market. So we had the flea market set up. It had electricity in it and everything. Oh. So that's where our command center was. He wouldn't come out of there for the rest of the night. He was scared.
Can I ask you, when your father saw the shadow man, did he see it in daylight? Or was it at nighttime?
Oh, my dad, you mean? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
it was daytime. No, it was definitely daytime. He was driving to the bigger city.
Okay.
Yeah.
The only reason I asked that, I worked in a hospital, intensive care unit, and we had one room that was active. I actually saw a full-bodied apparition in the room in broad daylight walk through a wall.
Oh.
And I thought it was one of the nurses because it looked kind of like her, built kind of like her, blonde hair.
Right.
Until I saw her come out of the storeroom in the back, and I had gone. We had one of those pneumatic tube systems, where they send stuff from like the pharmacy or whatever.
The suction
thing, suction thing, And I went. My station was right near there, and it was close enough that I could go get it without losing track of what I was doing. So I went over and got it. I looked in that room, and the room was empty, and it's broad daylight. And I see a lady walk from the side of the bed and walk through the wall. Oof. So needless to say, the left side of my brain slapped the right side of my brain and said, "What the hell did you just see?"
Right.
Well, then the nurse comes out of the back storeroom, and she comes over to me to get what's in my hand, and she said, "Are you all right? You look like you just saw a ghost." I said, "Yeah." Now, by that time, I've been investigating for a number of years and researching stuff.
Right.
I told her what I had seen. She said, "Well, can you describe it?" So I did.
Right.
And there was a patient that had been in that room that was afraid to die. She did, in fact, pass, but she was afraid to die. And they think it might have been her. Well, that same room, later on, because I used to rotate from day shift on to night shift. We had at least I was on like a 2-month rotation. I'd do a few months on days and go a few months on nights. And I was on night shift, and I don't know if you know a lot of, most ICU nurses are bomb-proof, because you got to be, because they go through, especially at night, because it's not like daytime, because daytime all the doctors are in there, and there's more staff, and there's more help, and,
Yeah.
But at nighttime, when something happens, there's 3 nurses, at least in our unit, there was like 3 nurses, and me, and a secretary, and that was what there was. Well, I'm sitting there doing my thing on my computer monitor, and one of the male nurses, his name was Bill Baker, will never forget him. I looked at Bill, and all the color drained out of his face, and I said, Bill, what's wrong? I thought he was having a heart attack or something. I said, Bill, what's wrong? He said, you won't believe me, but there's a shadow standing in that room next to the bed with red glowing eyes and a top hat on. And I rolled back, and sure enough, it's the typical top hat man. You know, the one they all describe, 7 feet tall or so, whatever, big tall thing with a top hat and red eyes.
Undertaker. Freaky.
And there it stands. So me being me, I get up and go toward it. I want to go find out what it is. Disappeared. Well, later on, that room, the ICU moved upstairs to more rooms and more beds. And that area became part of the ER, which was right next door to it, because having the ER next to the ICU made sense. You know, you get a bad patient and come in the ER, they get to roll right through 2 doors, and they're already back to us, you know. So ER took over that area as extra beds. And one of the nurses had gone in there to do something and said, in broad daylight, every light in that room came on, and he looked up, and there was a black shadow walking back and forth, facing in that room. That room had all kind of activity in it. I actually got to investigate that room. They let me investigate that room. Because they knew they heard what I did as my hobby, I guess you'd say. My off hours investigation stuff, and they let me investigate that room to see if I could get anything. But I just was wondering about whether it was daylight or dark, because every one of those 3 instances, except for one of them, happened in daylight.
Okay.
And, you know, people always assume that to have a paranormal experience of some kind, it has to be dark.
No, I don't believe that either.
I don't, well, far from it. It doesn't at all. But that's just kind of, you know, the TV shows don't help much with that. You know, they're always in darkness with night vision and all kinds of lights out. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. But you know, I just wanted to quickly interject. When it comes to that, I firmly believe that the only reason probably why things happen at nighttime is just because things are quieter. You don't have as much other energy from people. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't have like constantly talking. Like, it's always there, I believe. I just think it just has maybe more opportunity to happen at nighttime, or you may notice it more just because maybe you're let your guard down. You know,
senses wouldn't be as overloaded. You wouldn't have as much chatter.
Right.
You know, I mean, because in a given time when you're somewhere, even if it's not a big place and there's people talking, there's always background noise, and you know, somebody's walking or somebody's talking or moving something or whatever. So, you know, you would have, you know, your brain's still got to process all that information that's coming in. So that's true that at nighttime with less people around, you're apt to hear more or see more because there's less stimulation to get in the way.
Right.
You know, but I thought I'd throw that in. I wanted to ask about the Shadow Man, because we've done a lot of research in the shadows and EVPs too, and different things. And I always like to collect as much data as I can get when I hear a story like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just kind of throw it into my mental archive so I know kind of what's going on.
Yeah, I tried that once to put it into my mental archives, and I realized they're all rusted shut. I can't get into them anymore, so.
Well, you know, it's funny you were talking about railroad tracks. And I know, well, you know, we're in the South. Lots of train tracks down there, too. You know, you talk about the Mako lights down in Wilmington, and then we had lights here along an old track line not too far from where I'm at. And, you know, she's got the tracks up in Winnipeg and up in that area. And you hear all kind of, how many stories you heard about something happening near railroad tracks? Car stalls on railroad tracks.
Right.
Stuff like that. And there is actually some science behind that. Because railroad tracks, with a train going down a railroad track causes a magnetic field to occur, and especially the impedance along the tracks between the friction between the wheels and the track causes an impedance, and it is possible that a car that had stalled on the tracks may not start because of the impedance. So, there's some actual electrical science behind that, but you hear so much of it, the lights especially, and it does make one wonder what the connection actually is and why it's so prevalent. It seems to be repeated amongst areas that are very far apart.
Right.
But I thought I'd just ask a little more in depth because I wanted to know about a few more things. But by all means, go ahead.
Well, I guess unless there's anything you wanted to throw in, I guess we're about done for the week. Of course, now there is one thing I know. I already had said that Giving Up the Ghost, the name of your podcast, is going to be starting Monday, January 21st, or not January? Yeah, January 21st. Okay. I forgot what day of the week I was, and I'm like, wait, it's the 4th. No, that can't be right. Then I remember, no, wait, this is Monday. So yeah, that is right. What time is that going to be released?
Well, I'm hoping to get that to you shortly. So really, it's completely up to you. Make it available on Monday, I guess. I don't really have
we'll do it available on Monday, and then, of course, Monday it will be available on Spreaker. I will share a link for that to be able to spread that around. Then within a couple of days of that, we're going to have it available on iTunes, Podcast Addict, Google Play, Stitcher Podcast, Spotify, and just about anywhere else you want to download it at.
Perfect. So that's wonderful.
That one, though, it will take it a couple of days to get that one after the first episode's released to get it listed on them.
For sure. Yeah, so, I appreciate that. Yeah.
To anyone who wants to listen.
I just wanted to add to that. So basically, we're brand new. We have a healthy curiosity or obsession with the paranormal here in our home city, Winnipeg, and surrounding areas. And if anyone has anything to contribute or comments that they'd like to, hey, that happened to us, this happened here, definitely I'd love anybody to reach out to us and get a hold of us at givinguptheghost@gmail.com. We're also on Facebook, so Giving Up the Ghost at Facebook, and also Giving Up the Ghost on Twitter. So we're very reachable. And, so basically, how we like to say it, live every day like it's your last, but never give up the ghost.
All right. Well, Jazz, I want to, again, thank you for being on. Thank you for sharing some of your stories with us tonight, and looking forward to the podcast on Monday, January 21st. Again, that's going to be on Spreaker, and of course, by the end of the week, it will be everywhere you want to download your podcasts from. Again, I want to thank you for joining us and sharing some of your stories.
Thank you, Joel. Nice meeting you, and nice talking with Michael as well.
Same with you. I hope you have a wonderful night.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Bye.